A young dumb monkey and a lady play together. The young man tells her to leave quickly because the head maid might come looking for her, but the lady refuses to go. He reminds her that today is his debut and he made time to see her, so she shouldn't take it for granted. He then brings up the topic of rumors, but she says there's nothing interesting and everything feels dull. He asks about a new girl who arrived 2 days ago. The lady says the girl seems plain and nothing special. She then comments that he spent 10 years protecting a noble lady, and now he's guarding the young master. She wants to know how he feels about it. He simply says it's just part of the job. As he walks away, he thinks about how no one suspects the young master has been replaced. He feels relieved that the face everyone sees daily continues to fool them. He reminds himself to stay calm, thinking that the lady acting as the young master is likely more nervous than he is. They both arrive at the entrance. She admits she feels a little nervous. He tells her that's normal and reminds her to follow what they practiced. The lady is now pretending to be the young master, Duke Jonathan Lutheran, the eldest son of the Lutheran family and a possible heir. When she enters the grand hall with the guard, everyone treats her with great respect. The noble ladies whisper to each other, commenting on how handsome the young master has become. The guard watches and believes everything is going smoothly, and no one suspects anything. A man approaches the guard and shares some information about Duke Lutheran. The guard tries to tell the young master, but notices that she looks distracted and doesn't respond. He leans in and quietly calls her by her real title, Miss. She reacts with surprise, revealing behavior more like a lady than a nobleman. The crowd notices and begins to whisper about the young master's odd reaction. To cover it up, the guard explains that the young master has a throat issue. Then, they quickly head to the break room. He starts scolding her for not acting properly like the young master. She responds that it's not her fault and says whispering in her ear like that is unfair. He replies that he can't just shout "Miss" in front of a hall full of people. He admits he didn't expect her to fully adapt to being called the young master in just a week, but insists she must. She agrees, thinking back to what happened a week ago at Duke Lutheran's estate. Back then, she was informed she would have to take the place of her older brother. She asked Duke Lutheran if something had happened to him. He told her that her brother had not been well recently and that she didn't need to know more. He said rumors were starting to spread, and he needed her to keep up the act. Although she wasn't sure if it was really necessary, he insisted that it was. Even though she wasn't interested in politics, she understood that her brother's presence no longer had the same power. She acknowledged that in a world where everyone fights to be next in line, people notice weaknesses. She had heard that Duke Lutheran made a decision he believed was right, but it ended up being the wrong one. Duke Lutheran explained that just beneath the throne sit 5 major royal families, each expected to give their opinion. Their family was no exception. He had supported the king's eldest son, but the eldest daughter claimed succession rights instead. His support for the wrong candidate placed their family in a vulnerable position. He worried about how society would react if they found out the family's heir had been missing for months. That kind of news would damage their reputation. Letting the heir vanish without explanation would only fuel more rumors. That's why he needed the young lady to perfectly take on her brother's identity as the heir. He said he had no choice, and she didn't have the right to refuse. Duke Lutheran glanced at the guard, who seemed like he wanted to speak. He allowed him to go ahead. The guard, surprised, said he didn't think he should be listening to this conversation and was curious why Duke Lutheran included him. Duke Lutheran replied that he didn't expect his daughter Sion to manage this alone. That's why he needed the guard's help. As someone who had protected her since childhood, Kyle Lucas was the one he trusted most. He reminded Kyle that the family's honor is at stake and that he must never get caught. Kyle's job is to protect Sion at all costs. Back in the hall, Sion spends time with the noble young ladies, trying to engage in conversation. Meanwhile, Kyle quietly observes, thinking about their mission. Their main goal is to avoid being discovered. If anyone finds out the truth, it would be a serious failure. Even so, Kyle doesn't believe the family head made the wrong choice. Among the 5 great families, 3 dukes, including the Lutherans, supported the first prince. But that prince unexpectedly gave up the throne, ending everything suddenly. Although it feels like a crushing defeat, outsiders won't understand the details or see it from their position. Kyle can only guess at the hidden political struggles that might have happened. He believes the queen, now next in line, will respond fiercely. She won't let her enemies act freely. She may not go after them out of spite, but she will strike strategically. To avoid facing all three dukes at once, she will likely target the weakest one, Lutheran's family, and leave the others alone. Because of this, the head of the Lutheran family needed to keep up the appearance that the heir is still healthy and present. As Kyle continues to think, a red-haired woman approaches him. She compliments his looks and compares him to the rough general she saw earlier. Kyle instantly recognizes that the general is the one protecting the real Jonathan. The woman appears interested in him and invites him to meet her later at a place called the Drunken Sailor on the 3rd floor in the last room. She whispers the invitation to him before walking off. Sion notices the exchange between Kyle and the woman. Her expression turns cold. Later, Kyle and Sion ride back in a carriage. Kyle says the debut event went well and praises her performance. Sion stays quiet, ignoring him at first. When he calls her name, she finally responds with irritation. She brings up the woman from earlier, accusing Kyle of getting along too well with her. Kyle wants to explain what he really thinks about the woman, but holds back. Instead, he asks Sion for permission to go out later. She accuses him of wanting to meet that woman. Kyle insists that everything he does is for her benefit. He reminds her that he has never disappointed her. Sion agrees, but adds a condition. He must return to the house by morning. If she wakes up and doesn't find him there, she won't forgive him. Kyle promises. That evening, Kyle walks through the streets wearing a cloak. He thinks back to his earlier encounter. He wanted to tell Sion that the woman is not just an ordinary noble. Something felt off. While she spoke to him, her eyes kept shifting to the glass cups behind him. Those cups reflected Sion, still in disguise as the young master. Most people wouldn't have noticed, since her actions looked natural. But Kyle is trained to watch for threats. He realizes the woman's real target is the young master. She approached Kyle only to distract him. As Sion's guard, the only valuable thing he holds is knowledge of her location and weaknesses. If an outsider wanted to get close to Sion, the most effective way would be to use him. Kyle arrives at the location the woman mentioned. She welcomes him, saying she knew he would come. But in his mind, Kyle reaches a firm conclusion. This woman is an assassin. Kyle pretends that he came only to see the red-haired woman, acting as though he is simply curious or mildly interested. As he does so, a memory surfaces. He recalls the conversation he had with Duke Lutheran just a week ago. In that private meeting, Duke Lutheran explained why he had called Kyle separately. He didn't want to cause Sion any unnecessary fear, so he chose not to tell her the full story. But as her personal guard, Kyle needed to know the truth. Duke Lutheran pointed out the critical difference between Sion and her older brother, Jonathan. While Jonathan showed interest in people and situations, Sion kept her distance from most things. Their personalities were fundamentally different. Because of that, Kyle's role as Sion's protector required a different level of awareness. The Duke had trusted Kyle to understand the situation without needing to spell it out. He reminded Kyle that his skills were far above average and that he must never let his guard down. Kyle was told to view everything with suspicion, no matter how harmless it might seem on the surface. Returning to the present, Kyle stands before the red-haired woman in the room she directed him to. If not for the Duke's warning, he would have brushed her off as someone using a poor tactic to get his attention. But now, he sees her as a potential threat to Sion's safety. Because of that, he plays along carefully. He doesn't waste time and goes straight to the point, which catches the woman slightly off guard. He observes her closely and comments on her appearance and behavior. She doesn't quite seem like someone from a noble background. Kyle questions in his mind how she managed to get into the noble gathering earlier that day. The woman subtly backs away from him with grace and confidence. She insists that she does come from a noble house and claims that she got into the party through her connections and received a formal invitation. As they speak, she discreetly pulls a small dagger from her clothing, moving in a way that wouldn't draw much attention. But Kyle notices. He pretends not to see the weapon and apologizes lightly, making it seem like his earlier behavior was just part of his job. He continues to act casual and relaxed. Seeing that, the woman slowly hides the dagger again and says they can continue their conversation and enjoy each other's company. Kyle agrees, knowing full well what kind of situation he is in. After spending some time talking, the woman smiles and brings up how strange it is that they don't even know each other's names. She lightly jokes about it, then smoothly shifts the conversation. She tells him again that she genuinely wanted to get to know him and wasn't lying earlier when she said so. She adds that many women find it boring when men talk about their work, but she finds it interesting. She compliments his line of work and says it's impressive. She then slowly steers the conversation toward the person he is guarding, clearly aiming to learn more about the young master. Kyle realizes that the assassin is finally beginning to reveal her true nature. Her words, her movements, and her subtle probing confirm his suspicions. However, he remains calm and confident, knowing she will not be able to extract a single useful piece of information from him. Instead of pulling away, he makes the decision to raise the stakes by deepening the playful atmosphere between them. His aim is to keep her distracted and off balance. He understands that capturing her now would serve no real purpose. If she fails, her employer will only send another assassin, and the next one might be even harder to detect or track. There's no guarantee he'll be able to stop the next threat in time. The only way to truly protect Sion is to remove the source of the danger, the person who sent this woman. At the moment, the assassin is the only link he has to that unknown employer. Her identity is a thread, and Kyle intends to follow it for as long as possible. He plans to maintain their connection by pretending to play along, offering her small, harmless pieces of information about the young master, just enough to keep her interested and convinced he is slipping. In exchange, he will use every moment with her to uncover details about her background and, ultimately, her employer's location. Kyle stays with the assassin, keeping her engaged in light conversation and playful distractions. His goal is clear. He must prevent her from steering the discussion toward anything serious or probing. He skillfully fills the time with casual chatter and harmless topics, making sure she doesn't get the chance to ask the questions she truly wants to. By the time their meeting winds down, she hasn't managed to gather any real information. As soon as their time together ends, Kyle quietly gets dressed and prepares to leave. His quick departure catches her off guard. She appears surprised, clearly expecting him to stay the night. He calmly tells her that he has work early in the morning and cannot linger. Still trying to maintain the upper hand, she asks if they'll meet again, claiming she wants to see him another time. Kyle plays along and proposes they meet again in 3 days, this time at the same location. He adds that they can have a drink at the pub on the first floor before heading upstairs. She agrees without hesitation. Before leaving, Kyle brings up how they never exchanged names earlier. He introduces himself as Kyle Lucas, the head guard of Count Jonathan. He then asks for her name. She gives it as Elaine. Kyle silently doubts the name's truth, suspecting it might be a pseudonym, but he doesn't let it show. He politely says he looks forward to their next meeting, then quietly makes his exit. As soon as Kyle is gone, Elaine drops the charming, flirtatious expression she had been wearing. Her tone turns sharp as she mutters about how she wasn't able to get anything useful out of him. He turned out to be far more skilled and cautious than she expected. She reflects on how most knights who look like him are usually arrogant and easy to manipulate, but Kyle defied that expectation. Now she wonders how she'll report this back to her employer. Still, she doesn't see the night as a total failure. They've arranged another meeting, which gives her a second chance. With that in mind, she begins planning to drug Kyle's drink when they meet again in 3 days. As she prepares to rest, she remembers that someone named Tanya mentioned she'd be stopping by after work today. This reminds Elaine that some of the weapons hidden around the room actually belong to Tanya. Not wanting her to find out they were taken, Elaine decides she needs to return them before Tanya arrives. She begins collecting the weapons from various hiding spots, behind furniture, under floorboards, and inside false panels. One by one, she retrieves a total of 19 weapons. As she counts them, she briefly considers whether she went too far, but then she shrugs off the thought, reasoning that it's better to be overprepared than to risk being caught off guard. Elaine walks out of the building with a heavy bag filled with the weapons she gathered earlier. Her steps are steady but weighed down, and she mutters to herself about how her habit of overpreparing is becoming a burden. The bag makes her movements slower, and she complains quietly that carrying so many weapons only makes things harder for her in the end. Unbeknownst to her, in a narrow alley she just passed, Kyle stands hidden in the shadows. After pretending to leave the inn earlier, he circled back and took position in this alley, waiting for her to come out. His plan is simple. If he trails her carefully, she might lead him back to wherever she came from. With any luck, that place will offer a clue about her employer. Kyle remains cautious, knowing that catching the person behind her is the only way to truly eliminate the threat to Sion. As he begins to follow Elaine at a safe distance, He keeps his pace measured and quiet. He doesn't want to be seen or heard, and every movement is deliberate. But despite his focus, Kyle hopes this won't take too long. In the back of his mind, he remembers his promise to Scion, that he would be home before she wakes up. He wants to keep that promise more than anything. Far above them, a figure watches. A furry lady crouches on the edge of a nearby rooftop, her eyes fixed on Kyle as he follows Elaine. Her posture is relaxed but sharp, like someone ready to act at any moment. Without warning, she jumps from the building and lands on the ground silently. Kyle's instincts flare up. He senses something behind him and quickly glances over his shoulder. At first, there's nothing there, but in the next moment, a dagger is already pointed at him. The furry lady now stands just behind him, her presence sudden and dangerous. She comments on his sharp senses, making it clear she knows exactly what he's doing. Her tone is casual but firm, warning him not to try anything foolish unless he wants to be taken down. Kyle slowly raises his hands, signaling he doesn't want to escalate things. With a calm but slightly mocking tone, he comments that the idea of playing hero must have gotten to her head. He tries to explain that the situation isn't what she thinks it is. He urges her to lower her blade and simply walk away. However, the furry lady stands her ground. She firmly responds that she can't walk away, not when he's following her friend, Elaine. She says she won't turn a blind eye to someone tailing someone she cares about. The moment Kyle hears that Elaine is her friend, his demeanor changes. Without hesitation, he uses a swift, calculated move to throw her down to the ground. But despite being overpowered, she stubbornly keeps her dagger pressed to his neck. Kyle raises a fist, ready to strike if he must. But he doesn't follow through. He calmly tells her that all he has to do is pull his neck back slightly, and she won't be able to land a strike. She snaps back, confidently claiming that she's faster and dares him to try it. Instead of accepting the challenge, Kyle lowers his fist and steps back. He explains that if she really is Elaine's friend, then he has no reason to fight her. He adds that he had just spent time with Elaine earlier, but been too busy to accompany her. That's why he doubled back. He only wanted to make sure she returned safely. The furry lady narrows her eyes and steps closer. She leans in and sniffs his clothes, focusing intently. After a few seconds, she pulls back and admits that she believes him. His scent proves that he wasn't lying. She remarks that it looks like she jumped to the wrong conclusion, but she refuses to apologize. In her eyes, anyone would have reacted the same way under similar circumstances. Before leaving, she also points out that he didn't flinch even with a blade at his neck. To her, that's another sign that he's involved in something suspicious. With one last glance at him, she declares that now that she knows his scent, he better behave himself. Without another word, she bounds off, leaping across walls and rooftops until she vanishes into the night. Elaine opens the door and steps aside to let in the woman she refers to as Tanya, who carries a stormy expression. The air thickens with tension as Tanya enters, her displeasure unmistakable. Sensing this, Elaine grows uneasy, immediately feeling the weight of unspoken accusations. She tries to piece together what went wrong, only to be met with a cold realization. Tanya believes she is the one who almost compromised everything. Tanya, having just returned from an exhausting 2-week business trip, recounts how she unexpectedly crossed paths with Elaine, her only disciple, on the streets. Elaine, oblivious to the fact that she was being followed, unknowingly led a group of stalkers directly to their covert hideout. The gravity of the mistake dawns on Elaine with a jolt, her confusion turning into alarm as she tries to understand who these stalkers are. Tanya refuses to spell it out, insisting that Elaine should already know. This leads Elaine to suspect that it might be Kyle. Tanya seizes on the name, demanding clarification, prompting Elaine to confirm that Kyle is indeed one of her current targets. She then assumes Tanya must have eliminated him, but Tanya reveals that she nearly did, only stopping when Kyle claimed he was simply tailing Elaine out of concern. Tanya, still brimming with irritation, accuses Elaine of picking up a new mission behind her back and expresses frustration over being kept in the dark. Elaine, deflecting the blame, shifts responsibility to their superior, asserting that their captain, Veronica, is better positioned to explain the situation. This only deepens Tanya's annoyance as she learns that Veronica is not present, having gone out to collect intelligence. Faced with no other option, Elaine lays everything bare. She explains that her true target is Jonathan Lutheran, the sole heir to the influential Lutheran family. Kyle, the man Tanya nearly killed, holds the position of captain of Jonathan's personal guard. Elaine clarifies that she has been working to draw Kyle out slowly, hoping to gain his trust and extract crucial insider information. The operation is still in its early planning stage, and success hinges on precision. No one has closer access to Jonathan than his guard captain, making Kyle a linchpin in her strategy. Tanya, still brimming with irritation, demands to know whether Elaine has managed to extract any useful information from her recent encounter with Kyle. When Elaine admits that she hasn't secured any intel yet, Tanya's frustration flares. Her patience wears thin, and the failure only deepens her disappointment. Elaine, sensing the growing tension, quickly tries to justify herself. She explains that while it is true she was careless and allowed herself to be followed, Kyle's excuse for doing so, that he was concerned about her, suggests something more. His worry, in her view, is a clear sign that he is interested in her, both personally and perhaps emotionally. She believes that this interest can be turned to her advantage. With just one more meeting, she feels certain that she can draw him in completely, making him pliable enough to spill valuable information. Tanya, however, is far from convinced. She cuts off Elaine's hopeful reasoning, warning that one more chance is all she gets. If Elaine fails again, she promises to take matters into her own hands and finish the job herself. The threat hangs in the air, sharp and final. Despite this, Elaine tries to ease her mentor's anger, assuring her that she will not fail and that Tanya won't need to intervene. But Tanya remains skeptical, accusing Elaine of being all talk, unless she has something solid to fall back on. At that, Elaine smirks slightly and produces a small vial filled with a shimmering red liquid and holds it up for Tanya to see. Kyle returns to the Lutheran castle early in the morning, feeling the weight of exhaustion from staying up all night. His eyes show visible dark circles, and he realizes that the sky is already beginning to lighten. Since there is not much time left until sunrise, he figures it is pointless to try sleeping now because he doubts he will be able to wake up on time. He remembers the promise he made to be present when Sion wakes up, so he chooses to sit and stand guard in front of her room. Although he knows the real assassination target is Jonathan and not Sion, he believes it is better to be cautious. He feels that Sion should be safe in her own room, but just to be extra careful, he makes a mental note to assign guards to her room starting tomorrow. Elsewhere in the castle, Sion lies awake in her bed, feeling irritated and restless. She is frustrated by Kyle's absence from the mansion and cannot stop herself from wondering what he might be doing. Unable to stay still any longer, she gets out of bed and decides to take a walk. As she steps out of her room, she unexpectedly finds Kyle sitting outside, already dozing off in a seated position. She pauses in surprise and starts to wonder why he chose to sleep there. Then, a memory comes to her. She had insisted he be back before she wakes up. This reminder makes her feel that she may have been too harsh on him. Feeling a little guilty but comforted, Sion quietly sits down beside him. As time passes, she begins to relax in the calm silence and eventually drifts off to sleep too. When the sun finally rises, the headmaid approaches with the other maids to begin the morning duties. They all stop in their tracks as they see both Kyle and Sion fast asleep together outside her room. The headmaid watches the peaceful scene with a gentle smile and remarks that, although the two of them may have grown older, they are still the same at heart. She decides to delay the morning schedule so that they can enjoy a quiet tea time together instead. One of the younger maids hesitates and starts to suggest waking up Sion, but another maid gently stops her and tells her to just enjoy the moment. Later in the day, Kyle meets with the headmaid, who greets him with a light remark about him finally being awake. Kyle, still feeling a little awkward, mentions that she should have woken him up when she saw him asleep on the floor outside Sion's room. The headmaid responds with a gentle smile, saying that he was sleeping so peacefully, and she knows that she has a soft spot for moments like that. Kyle admits that it's a relief he happened to wake up before Sion, as he had promised to be there when she wakes. The headmaid, curious, asks how Sion is doing. Kyle explains that he carefully moved her back to her bed without waking her, making sure she stayed comfortable. After a short pause, he asks the headmaid if they can speak privately for a moment. They move to a quieter place, and Kyle confides in her that the situation surrounding them has become more complicated. The headmaid listens closely and responds with concern, reflecting on how difficult it is to think that a young girl like Sion, barely 20 years old, could have her life put in danger. Kyle says he has thought about everything and made the choice not to tell Sion about the threats, as he doesn't want to frighten her unnecessarily. The headmaid agrees with his judgment, saying there is no point in making Sion anxious, when knowing the truth wouldn't change the situation. However, their conversation is suddenly interrupted when Sion enters the room looking slightly confused and asking what is going on and why they are talking about her. The headmaid quickly shifts her tone and greets her politely, keeping her composure. Sion then notices Kyle and asks when he returned to the mansion. Kyle casually says that he just got back, while the headmaid joins in and says she was just in the middle of scolding him for being late.